The envelope arrived 30 minutes before I was supposed to walk down the aisle, delivered by a trembling woman in her 70s who claimed to be my grandmother. A grandmother I never knew existed. My hands shook as I opened it, my wedding dress rustling like autumn leaves around me, and inside was a birth certificate with my name on it, but not my mother's. Below that, a handwritten note that would shatter everything I believed about my life. Your mother sold you for $10,000 when you were 3 days old because she said you ruined her life and she couldn't stand to look at you. I've been searching for you for 25 years. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but I couldn't let you get married without knowing the truth about where you came from. Your real grandmother, Dorothy Walsh. The words swam before my eyes as the sounds of my wedding guests chatting and laughing in the church sanctuary below seemed to fade into a distant hum, replaced by the thundering of my heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. Before I continue with this story that has torn apart every foundation of my identity and left me questioning every moment of love I thought I'd experienced, I need to ask for your support. If this story touches your heart or helps you understand the complexity of family secrets, please hit that like button. Knowing that others care about my journey gives me strength to keep going. Subscribe to this channel because I'll be sharing more of my story as I navigate this devastating discovery, and your support means everything to me right now. In the comments below, please tell me where you're watching from and what time it is in your world. And if you have any advice for someone who's just learned that their entire life was built on a lie, I desperately need to hear it. I'm praying for each person who takes the time to listen to my story, and I want you to know that your presence here, your willingness to witness my pain, makes me feel less alone in this nightmare. Thank you for standing with me during the darkest moment of my life, and may God bless each of you for your kindness and compassion. My name is Natalie Coleman, and until that envelope arrived, I thought I knew exactly who I was. I was born in Portland, Oregon, raised by a single mother named Patricia Coleman who worked 2 jobs to support us, and I had grown up believing that my father had abandoned us when I was a baby. My mother was distant, often cold, and I'd spent my childhood trying to earn her love through perfect grades, helping with household chores and staying out of her way when she came home exhausted from work. I always assumed her coldness was because she was tired, because life was hard, because being a single mother had worn her down to nothing. Growing up, I never understood why my mother seemed to resent my very existence. She never hugged me without me initiating it, never told me she was proud of me even when I graduated valedictorian of my high school class, and never seemed genuinely happy about my accomplishments. When I got accepted to college with a full scholarship, her response was a tired nod and a comment about how I'd finally be out of her hair. When I graduated summa cum laude with my degree in elementary education, she didn't even attend the ceremony, claiming she had to work. The pattern continued throughout my 20s. I became a teacher, found a job I loved at Lincoln Elementary School in downtown Portland, and tried to build a life that would make her proud. I met my fiancé, Andrew Thompson, at a charity fundraiser for the school, and for the first time in my life, I felt genuinely loved by someone. Andrew was kind, patient, and everything my mother wasn't. He listened when I talked about my difficult relationship with her, held me when I cried about feeling unwanted, and assured me that her coldness was her loss, not my fault. When Andrew proposed to me in the school's garden after a particularly wonderful day with my students, I thought my life was finally beginning. I was going to have a family of my own, people who would love me unconditionally, and I would finally understand what it felt like to belong somewhere. We planned a small, intimate wedding at St. Matthew's Church, invited close friends and family, and I spent months dreaming about walking down the aisle to marry the man who had shown me what real love looked like. My mother's behavior during the wedding planning was typically distant and uninterested. She complained about the cost even though Andrew and I were paying for everything ourselves, made snide comments about the guest list, and seemed generally annoyed by the entire process. When I asked her to help me choose my wedding dress, she said she was too busy. When I invited her to my bridal shower, she showed up late and left early. I told myself it was just her personality, that she didn't know how to express love, and that maybe after the wedding things would be different. The morning of my wedding, I woke up in my childhood bedroom in the small house on Elm Street where I'd grown up. My mother was already gone. She'd left a note saying she had errands to run and would meet me at the church. I spent the morning getting ready with my maid of honor, my best friend Jennifer, who had been trying to lift my spirits about my mother's absence. Some people just aren't good at emotions, she said, curling my hair. Your mom loves you in her own way. I wanted to believe her, but the familiar ache in my chest told me otherwise. That's when the knock came at the door. Jennifer went to answer it, and I heard her talking to someone in hushed tones. When she came back upstairs, her face was pale and she was holding an envelope. There's a woman downstairs who says she's your grandmother, Jennifer said carefully. She says she has something important to give you. I was confused. Both of my grandparents had died before I was born, according to my mother. I'd never had any extended family, no aunts or uncles, no cousins, nothing. My mother had always said we were alone in the world. I went downstairs in my wedding dress, my hair half done, and found an elderly woman standing in our living room. She was small and frail, with silver hair and kind eyes that looked remarkably like my own. She was crying as she looked at me, and she kept saying, "You're so beautiful, just like your mother was at your age." I was confused because she was clearly talking about someone other than Patricia Coleman. "I'm sorry," I said, "but I think there's been a mistake. I don't have a grandmother." The woman's face crumpled. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, "there's been a mistake, but not the kind you think." She handed me the envelope with shaking hands. "My name is Dorothy Walsh, and I'm your biological grandmother. Your real mother was my daughter, Catherine Walsh, and she died in a car accident when you were 6 months old. The woman you call your mother bought you from the state when you were 3 days old because she couldn't have children of her own and thought a baby would save her marriage." I stared at her, unable to process what she was saying. "That's impossible," I said. "Patricia Coleman is my mother. I have her last name. I have a birth certificate." Dorothy nodded sadly. "Yes, you do. Because she paid to have one made with her name on it. But I have your original birth certificate, the one with your real mother's name. Catherine Walsh. She was 22 years old when she had you, and she loved you so much. She named you Catherine Rose Walsh, after herself and her grandmother." My hands were shaking as I opened the envelope. Inside was a birth certificate that looked official, with my birth date and the hospital where I was born, but with a different mother's name. Below that were photographs of a young woman who looked exactly like me holding a baby. There were letters written in a handwriting I didn't recognize, addressed to "My darling Catherine Rose." And at the bottom of the pile was a document that made my blood run cold. A private adoption agreement between Patricia Coleman and the state of Oregon, dated 3 days after my birth, with a payment receipt for $10,000. "This can't be real," I whispered, but even as I said it, I knew it was true. It explained so much. Why my mother had always seemed to resent me, why she'd never been able to love me the way I needed to be loved, why she'd always made me feel like I was a burden she couldn't wait to get rid of. I wasn't her daughter. I was a purchase, a transaction, a baby she'd bought to fix her marriage and then blamed when it didn't work. Dorothy sat down beside me on the couch and took my hands in hers. "I've been looking for you for 25 years, she said through her tears. "When Catherine died, I tried to get custody of you, but the state said you'd already been placed in a good home. They wouldn't tell me where you were or who had adopted you. I hired private investigators, I posted ads in newspapers, I never stopped looking for you. And then last week I saw your engagement announcement in the Portland Tribune and I knew it was you. You look exactly like your mother did at your age." I felt like I was drowning. My wedding was supposed to start in an hour, and I was discovering that my entire life had been a lie. The woman I'd spent 25 years trying to love, trying to please, trying to understand wasn't even my mother. She was a stranger who had bought me like a piece of property and then resented me for not being what she wanted. "Where is she?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Where's Patricia?" Dorothy's face darkened. "She's probably at the church waiting for you to walk down the aisle. She doesn't know I found you. She doesn't know that I know what she did." I felt a rage building inside me that I'd never experienced before. This woman had stolen my life, had deprived me of knowing my real family, had made me feel unwanted and unloved for 25 years. And now she was sitting in my wedding church, pretending to be my mother. Jennifer was standing in the doorway, having heard the entire conversation. Her face was white with shock. "Natalie," she said softly, "what are you going to do?" I looked at her, then at Dorothy, then at the birth certificate in my hands. What was I going to do? I was supposed to be walking down the aisle in 30 minutes to marry the man I loved, but instead I was learning that everything I thought I knew about myself was a lie. Dorothy pulled out more photographs from her purse. "This is your mother when she was your age," she said, showing me a picture of a young woman in a graduation gown. She was studying to be a nurse. She was so smart, so kind, so full of life. "And this is your grandfather, my husband Robert. He died 5 years ago, but he never stopped hoping we'd find you. And here are your cousins, your aunts and uncles, your entire family that you never knew existed." I stared at the photographs of people who looked like me, people who shared my features, my expressions, my smile. These were my people, my real family, and I'd been kept from them for 25 years by a woman who couldn't love me because I wasn't really hers. The wedding music had started playing downstairs. I could hear it drifting up from the church next door. Andrew was waiting for me, our guests were assembled, and I was supposed to be the happiest woman in the world. Instead, I was falling apart. I stood up, still in my wedding dress, and walked to the window. I could see the church, could see people filing in, could see the life I'd planned for myself just a few hundred feet away. But I couldn't move forward with the wedding, not with this knowledge burning in my chest. I couldn't start my new life with Andrew without confronting the lies that had shaped my old life. "I need to talk to her," I said finally. "I need to confront Patricia." Dorothy nodded. "I understand. But please know that you have family now. You have people who love you, who have always loved you, who never stopped looking for you. Whatever happens with Patricia, you're not alone anymore." She hugged me, and for the first time in my life I felt what it was like to be held by someone who shared my blood, someone who loved me unconditionally. I called Andrew from my mother's house. "Something's happened," I told him through my tears. "I can't explain over the phone, but I need to postpone the wedding. I need to deal with something first." Andrew was confused and concerned, but he trusted me. "Whatever you need," he said. "I'll explain to the guests and we'll reschedule. Just take care of yourself." His understanding and support made me love him even more. But it also made me realize how different real love was from the conditional, resentful relationship I'd had with the woman I'd called mother. Jennifer helped me out of my wedding dress and into regular clothes. Dorothy waited downstairs while I changed, and when I came back down she was looking at photographs on the mantel. "She never put up pictures of you as a baby," she observed. "All of these are from when you were older." I'd never noticed that before, but she was right. There were no baby pictures of me in Patricia Coleman's house, no photos of me as a toddler, nothing from my first few years of life. Because she hadn't been there for those years. She'd bought me when I was 3 days old, and even then she'd been too resentful to document my early childhood. We drove to the church together, Dorothy and I. My real grandmother and I, going to confront the woman who had stolen my life. As we walked up the church steps, I could hear the murmur of confused guests inside. Andrew had obviously explained that the wedding was postponed, but people were still gathered, talking in hushed tones about what could have happened. Patricia Coleman was standing at the back of the church, looking annoyed and impatient. When she saw me walk in with Dorothy, her face went white. She knew immediately who Dorothy was, and she knew that her secret was out. "Natalie," she said, trying to sound casual, "what's going on? Why are you not in your wedding dress? And who is this woman?" I walked up to her, my hands shaking with rage. "This woman is my grandmother," I said, my voice carrying in the quiet church. "My real grandmother, Dorothy Walsh, the mother of Catherine Walsh, who was my actual mother before she died in a car accident when I was 6 months old." Patricia's face went from white to gray. "Natalie, I don't know what this woman has told you, but she told me the truth," I interrupted. "She told me that you bought me from the state for $10,000 when I was 3 days old. She told me that you're not my mother, that you never were my mother, and that you've been lying to me for 25 years. The church had gone completely silent. Our guests were staring at us, unable to process what they were hearing. Patricia looked around at all the faces watching us, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how to handle this situation. "Even if that's true," she said finally, I raised you. I fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head. I'm the only mother you've ever known." Her words were like a slap in the face. "You raised me," I said, my voice rising. "You resented me every single day of my life. You made me feel unwanted, unloved, like I was a burden you couldn't wait to get rid of. You never hugged me, never told me you were proud of me, never showed me even basic affection. You didn't raise me. You tolerated me because you were stuck with me." Dorothy stepped forward. "She has a right to know about her real family," she said to Patricia. "She has a right to know about her mother, about the people who love her." Patricia's face twisted with an emotion I'd never seen before. Not just anger, but something deeper, something uglier. "Her mother was a stupid girl who got herself pregnant and then died in a car accident," she spat. "I gave her a better life than she would have had with you people." The cruelty in her voice, the way she dismissed my real mother's death, the way she talked about my biological family like they were beneath her, made something snap inside me. "You gave me a better life?" I said, my voice shaking with rage. "You gave me a life of feeling unwanted and unloved. You gave me a childhood of wondering what was wrong with me, why my own mother couldn't love me. You gave me 25 years of believing I was fundamentally flawed, fundamentally unlovable. You stole my family from me and you stole my sense of self-worth." People were starting to leave the church, uncomfortable with the confrontation they were witnessing. But Andrew stayed and Jennifer stayed and a few close friends remained to support me. Dorothy stood beside me, her hand on my shoulder, and for the first time in my life I felt like I had someone truly on my side. "I want you to leave," I said to Patricia. "I want you to get out of my wedding, out of my life, and I never want to see you again." Patricia looked at me with an expression I'd seen countless times before. Annoyance, impatience, resentment. But this time I finally understood what it meant. It meant that she had never loved me, had never wanted me, and had spent 25 years wishing she'd never bought me in the first place. "Fine," she said. "You want to know the truth? I regretted buying you the moment I brought you home. You cried constantly, you were difficult, you didn't make my marriage better like I thought you would. My husband left anyway and I was stuck with a baby I didn't want and couldn't return. I did my duty, I raised you, but I never pretended to love you because I didn't. I couldn't. You were a reminder of everything that went wrong in my life." Her words should have hurt, but instead they felt like a strange kind of relief. Finally, after 25 years, I was hearing the truth. She had never loved me, had never been capable of loving me, and it wasn't because I was unlovable. It was because she had bought me for the wrong reasons and then blamed me when I couldn't fix her life. Patricia left the church without another word and I never saw her again. Dorothy and I stood in the empty sanctuary, surrounded by wedding flowers and the remnants of a day that was supposed to be the happiest of my life. Instead, it had become the day I learned that my entire existence had been built on a lie. Andrew came up to me and took my hands. "I'm so sorry," he said. "I can't imagine how you're feeling right now." I looked at him, this man who had chosen to love me, who had wanted to marry me, who had shown me what real love looked like. And I realized that I couldn't marry him, not now, not with this knowledge eating away at me. I needed time to figure out who I was, to process what I'd learned, to understand my place in the world. "I need time," I told him. "I need to figure out who I am now that I know the truth. I need to get to know my real family, to understand where I came from, to rebuild my sense of self from the ground up." Andrew nodded, though I could see the pain in his eyes. "I understand," he said. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready." But I knew, even as he said it, that I might never be ready. The discovery of my true origins had shattered not just my understanding of my past, but my ability to trust my own judgment about the future. If I had been so wrong about something as fundamental as my own identity, how could I trust myself to make decisions about marriage, about love, about anything? Dorothy and I left the church together and drove to her house in the suburbs. It was a small, neat home filled with photographs of the family I'd never known I had. She showed me pictures of my real mother as a child, as a teenager, as a young woman. She told me stories about Catherine's dreams, her plans for the future, her joy when she found out she was pregnant with me. She was so excited to be a mother, Dorothy said, tears streaming down her face. She had already bought baby clothes, had already decorated a nursery, had already chosen your name. She died before she could see you walk, hear you say your first words, watch you grow up. She would have loved you so much. I spent the next few days at Dorothy's house, learning about my real family, looking through photo albums and trying to process the magnitude of what I'd discovered. She called my aunts and uncles my cousins, people who had been grieving my loss for 25 years without knowing if I was even alive. They welcomed me with open arms, but I felt like a stranger in my own family. The adjustment was overwhelming. I had to learn new names, new faces, new family history. I had to understand that I came from a family of nurses and teachers, people who valued education and service to others. I had to reconcile the fact that my love of working with children, my desire to help others, my personality traits that I'd thought were uniquely mine, were actually inherited from a family I'd never known. Andrew called me every day, checking on me, offering his support, asking if I needed anything. His patience and understanding made me love him even more, but it also made me realize how damaged I was by the revelation.